This game's not very good right now, at all.
Now, I've got to say, this was one of the most unplayable games I think I've ever played on a controller.
It's still wank, absolutely wank.
This is so far off. It's so far away. Nothing makes sense.
It isn't particularly workable. It doesn't feel consistent at all.
Oh my.
It's embarrassing, frankly.
It doesn't feel finished. It feels like it needs like another year, honestly.
So I already kind of expected that the release of Project Motor Racing would lead to some kind of controversy, but I did not expect that it would turn into such a shit show. And in this video I kind of wanted to go over pretty much all of the minor and major things that have been going on behind the scenes of this game's release. So as it stood, the game, when it actually came out on Steam, released to very negative reviews with, I think the lowest I've seen was only 15% positive. And truthfully, I cannot remember the last time I saw a racing game have a very negative review standing on Steam. Even Rennsport and TDU Solar Crown, which I think must be like among the biggest flops as far as racing game releases go, even those only released to mostly negative reviews. So that is slightly better already than what we've seen now with Project Motor Racing. Now, since the day has passed, a lot more people were actually now able to try out the game, but just the fact that there was even a point at which it was at very negative, which is once again like the worst I've seen outside of like Fallout 3, is really wild. And I was really wondering why that is, because like I think on a surface level, it is not necessarily a worse game than, let's say, for example, Rennsport, which I just think offers less for the same amount of money. But I think it was really just the disappointment that came with Project Motor Racing and how they hyped up the game and how they advertised it and how excited people were. It was just much more of a letdown for people, which is why the initial reception was so negative. The game is also sitting at a rating of 66 on Metacritic currently, which is definitely a lot more tame, but still, as far as racing games go, it is really, really bad still. So needless to say, I think people just felt really betrayed when it comes to the game. Not just the state that it launched in, but also the kind of experience that it provided on a basic surface level. And as a result of this entire debacle, this massive disaster, an apology statement has also been issued already by the developers. It's pretty much the classic apology letter you have probably already seen time and time again from other studios, where they just kind of like apologize for the state of the game and vouch that they are going to improve things from here on out. Now, in my previous video, I already went over some of the negatives that I have noticed when it comes to the game, but I just kind of wanted to hone in on, I think, one aspect that is really souring the experience for so many people, and it's that this supposed simulation racing game, the sim racing game, is actually just a really bad simulation. So whether the game is fun or not, that is very debatable, and I think, you know, everyone kind of like experiences fun in different ways. But as far as like the simulation aspect goes, how actually realistic or at least authentic this game is, it is actually a lot worse than I think we all thought initially. So one aspect that I already showed in my previous video that I kind of only remembered while I was editing the video that I think I can now just kind of like talk a little bit more about is that wall riding is genuinely a valid strategy. Like, wall riding is the meta in this game. This is something that I discovered during a stream of mine where I kind of bottled it on the Nordschleife and just kind of like wrote it out on a wall and realized that I actually can pass a lot of opponents that way. Let's finally write it out. That was insanely fast. Wait, what? I mean, I got a penalty, but like, there just doesn't seem to be enough friction going on between the wall and the car. So there isn't actually any slowing down happening. You're actually just like kind of gliding across it and pretty much no speed penalty. There's something that I then decided to push a little bit further by going to Bathurst, because it is pretty much like the premier racetrack to wall ride on, because there's hardly any grass on the second sector, and yeah, it led to pretty much the results that you could expect. Oh, this is crazy. And if this just gives you 2 seconds, it's way too little. Holy crap. Oh! Guys, we officially did it. Proper attempt. Wait, where am I going? I think I'm off. Oh my god. How did I get so much airtime? Oh my god, don't tell me oh my god, I think I see what's going on. When it's, or like, gains upward velocity when it's upside down. Like the car is being dragged dragged to the... Oh god. The car is being dragged into the air. But hey, maybe this isn't as unrealistic as I'm making it seem. After all, wall riding has already been done in real-life racing, especially fairly recently in NASCAR. So if this aspect didn't prove yet that this is a bad simulation, this next point surely will. So one common critique point has been that the tires are just not gripping enough. Like, the cars have too much give to them, basically. You cannot really push the cars, or by extension the tires. They will just constantly start sliding out and you will lose grip, even when you're not really like pushing the car all that much. And the cope here has been from many people that this is actually just realistic. This is how tires behave. All the other sim racing games that have come out up to this point, they're all too forgiving. This is how cars are supposed to behave. I think the car is completely cooked now. You will not believe what I just saw. Pull up the VOD. You see how it says like 5 with a bunch of dots here and I couldn't move? So I was like, okay, maybe I'm just driving like 2 kilometers per hour. I think the car is completely... 900. That was a 4-digit count. Like the tire's actually spinning this fast, but the car is moving. It's climbing back up. I think the tires are spinning the wrong way. Because it comes all the way back around to 0 and then climbs up again. I would not... Well, it seems like this is actually not even true at all because the tire model is completely broken. Because as people found out, the best grip in this game you're going to find with, get this, wet tires. So the tires that you're supposed to use for when it is raining actually provide the most amount of grip even on a dry surface.
Turn 1, a bit of a snatch of the tyre there, but this is realistic, right? It's still wank, absolutely wank. Watch this. And I'm going to put wet tyres on the car. And we've got a lot of grip, 140 kilometers an hour around turn 1, straight out of the pits. I'm on wet tyres on a flipping dry track. Look at this. This is night and day different to the dry tyres, getting them hot and sticking, blah, blah, blah.
I think this has mainly to do with the tire temperatures. Like the regular dry tires at the moment, they just don't seem to be heating up enough. Whereas the wet tires on a dry surface heat up basically instantly and as such actually provide a lot more grip. And as such it is actually possible to maybe even pull off way, way better lap times using wet tires on a dry surface. Which, yeah, tell me again how that's realistic. So, with wall riding, we already know the physics aren't really realistic. With the wet tires, we already know that the car simulation isn't really realistic. But this extends even further with the AI itself. The AI is obviously a really, really important factor to making racing, at least in single player, authentic and believable. And the AI was something that they continued to glaze a lot over the marketing of this game. Even outright telling this is the best AI they have ever seen in any racing game. And it's just not good. It's just not good. The primary point that they wanted to sell is that the AI in this game is running on the same physics as the players, which is often not the case, even in other sim racing games, usually because it would be just way too hard for a computer or a CPU to calculate all of that. But this is something that they really wanted to advertise, and this is the reason why they called this a next-gen sim racing game, is because apparently for the first time ever, all cars on the grid, whether the AI or player, are running on the exact same physics model. And apparently that way, the AI will not have an unfair advantage over the player anymore. And this is only half true. So it is definitely true that the AI is running on the same physics model as the player is. So this is something that Silent proved in a tweet of his, where you can see that if you use the same tire data that the AI is using, even if you're on the same physics model, you still have a ton more grip. So the AI still has a massive advantage over you. It basically plays like a Forza game. And so it is still pretty evident that the AI in this game, despite how much they try to sell you that they are believable and they have, you know, on an even playing field with the AI, it still has an unfair advantage over the player. Which is funny because it isn't even using that, because the AI itself and its pathfinding is so poor that it is not even remotely able to competitively engage you as the player. I'm not sure what kind of selling point this is even supposed to be, that the AI is running on the same physics. It doesn't really matter. Like, if you can't really notice it, no one really cares. What people want is not the AI running on the same physics. What people want is engaging races with the AI. And you can do that completely artificially. So for example, I think one of the racing games with the best AI that I know of is the first Grid game. So in that game, the AI also has its own different separate physics model from the player. But in that game, you can genuinely have some of the best racing out there, because the developers just really optimized the AI to work really well with the player. Beyond the AI, there's also a really broken penalty system that people have already exposed very many times. So the penalty system in this game is somehow both too lenient and too strict. So you can just absolutely cut through corners and the penalty system will not kick in and you will not get a penalty. But at the same time, it will also kick in pretty much every time you even go slightly out on the grass. So even if due to a driving mistake or because you got crashed out by an opponent, you land on the grass, the game will still penalize you because of it, which is very realistic, I guess. And overall, people that have played the game that have had not only just like immense amount of sim racing experience, but also real world racing experience, basically came out and said that the overall handling model in this game is just way too punishing. This is something that I think especially Jimmy Broadbent echoed in his own review. It's just that the cars just give way too easily, and it is just not, you're just not able to really properly push these cars to their limits because they are just way too fidgety, way too punishing.
Talking about driving the M4 GT4, all the GT4s seem to have this weird thing where it's super leery at the rear of the car for some reason. They're meant to be friendly cars to drive. It feels like it wants to kill you at every corner.
And I think this plays into the same old saying, the same old trope, and it's that people just have this weird misunderstanding that a sim or a racing game is only realistic if the cars are hard to drive. Like, these two things have to basically be in tandem with one another. If it's not hard to drive these cars, it's not realistic. When these two things have almost nothing to do with one another. It's always like a car-by-car basis, and especially modern cars, like for example entry-level GT4 cars, are actually surprisingly simple to drive. Now obviously if you push these cars to their limits and to what like the tires are capable of, you will eventually start spinning out and you will start having issues, but aerodynamics and tire models and all of that in real-world racing has come such a long way to the point where driving modern race cars is a lot simpler than a lot of people think. It's obviously not a walk in the park, but you can reliably drive these cars under the limit and not have much of an issue driving them. But for some reason there seems to be still this common misconception in the sim racing game space where every car needs to be hard to drive. If it's not hard to drive, it's not realistic. At that point it's arcade. Which is just not true. It's something that actual real-world racing drivers have been saying for so long, especially like for example in the rally space, where real-world rally drivers tried games like, for example, Richard Burns Rally and complained that the games just are too punishing. Like, these cars don't drive as they should.
Making a car difficult doesn't mean it's more realistic. At all. No.
This is a topic that I could probably save for another video, but yeah, to just kind of like wrap it up, I think with all the points that I mentioned here, it's just really obvious that this sim racing game, Project Motor Racing, is just a bad simulation. It is a bad representation of the real world. And I think as such, it just completely fails in its primary mission, which is to deliver authentic, believable racing to the players. Now, while all of that definitely sucks, I think this is nothing that is beyond saving. I think with enough constructive feedback and enough like work and time that the developers put in, this is something that you could eventually iron out and maybe over the course of a year or two could turn into a genuinely decent sim. However, I just do not see this happening with the attitude to criticism that the studio and some of the developers in it seem to have towards criticism and feedback. This is something I already talked about in my previous video a little bit, but just to kind of like go over the same beats again. Basically, when I came out and said that the game does not really feel decent on a gamepad, it just doesn't feel like I'm in control of the cars whatsoever, I was basically brushed off by saying that all of that is actually realistic and you just don't have that kind of control. I need to play on a wheel, yada yada yada. My sentiment was then later on echoed by other content creators, including Super GT, who also just found the gamepad handling to be more than subpar. And only now that more people have started to chime in is this probably being taken a little bit more seriously. But when I was first coming out on this and I just like outlined all the issues that I had with the gamepad handling and what is going wrong and how to fix it, I was just kind of like brushed off and told that I just don't know how to drive and I should try to like go off the throttle a little bit when I noticed that the car is like freaking out. Although in the clip that I provided, you can clearly see like the RPM gauge is right there in the corner. You can see exactly when I let off the throttle. So it just kind of shows that they would rather just kind of like brush things off as like, oh, this is like how it's supposed to drive. It kind of like goes back into this point that I mentioned earlier where they genuinely believe that realism means it needs to be hard to drive. And they're just not taking mine or anyone else's feedback seriously because they genuinely think this is realistic. They genuinely think this is how things are supposed to work. But I know that my complaint was purely about like gamepad support and how the gamepad inputs are translated into actual steering inputs in the game. So what about the other people? What about people that play this on the wheel that don't like the handling? I already mentioned Jimmy Broadbent earlier, who did complain about the game's handling, and in fact he was actually able to play the game several months ago at the Sim Racing Expo in Germany, where he had the same issues with the game, where he just was not able to control the cars in this game, particularly the GT4 cars, which, by the way, he also just drove himself. Like, he himself has driven, and I think even won, a GT4 race in his, like, real-world racing career. And that's not to mention that Jimmy is someone who has tens of thousands of hours across so many sim racing games and even ran his own sim racing events. So if there's one person whose feedback I would take very, very, very seriously, it's Jimmy's. He is probably like one of the nicest and most like constructive guys you can have on your team who can genuinely provide really, really good usable feedback. And when Jimmy was at the Sim Racing Expo, clearly struggling to drive some of the GT4 cars that he drove just fine in real life, the developers watching him play it and struggle basically told him that he's just out of practice maybe. He just can't drive these cars anymore. And then when those same developers then tried out the car as well, like the same car, same track, everything, they also couldn't drive the car.
But I drove that car, couldn't keep it on the road, told by the developer that I couldn't drive the car, and then watched him make the same mistakes I did when he drove it as well. So something just wasn't right about the title.
Which is like crazy ironic, but once again they insisted that this is realistic, and they're just not racing drivers, so they clearly can't drive these cars. It's just such a weird way to just engage with this problem. Like, you see someone else struggle with something, someone who should have loads of experience and actually has loads of experience under the belt, and you yourself struggle with it too, and instead of trying to improve things, you think this is how it's supposed to work. Like, this is like, you're not happy until you're struggling. It's such a weird way to handle this kind of criticism. And this kind of like attitude to criticism also goes all the way to the top. So the head developer of the game, named Ian Bell, has basically been replying to various tweets pretty much all day since the game came out, and even before it came out. So he is basically constantly replying to people's and criticism and yada yada. And at times you can really tell that he just is really, really stubborn and just does not accept that there are issues with the game. So here you can, for example, see an exchange between Ian Bell and a fan who voiced some concerns about the in-game engine audio of the cars, complaining that they are not accurate enough. Ian Bell basically just kind of rebutted and said that they will continue to polish them, but they are going to sound better in the game because of the YouTube compression. You shouldn't watch any YouTube comparisons on the car audio because they are just, the YouTube compression is ruining the audio. I know a lot about like YouTube and how its compression algorithm works because I am a YouTuber. And while yes, the audio quality does get reduced a little bit, it's not to the degree where it fundamentally changes the sound. Like, my voice does not sound different to you from watching this video here. It doesn't change the underlying tone or rumble or anything about that. The midtones, like all of that is still like pretty much intact. It's just the audio quality basically. And even to that degree, YouTube's audio is actually surprisingly decent. But okay, let's just take his word for it for a moment. Let's just assume that the YouTube compression is ruining the engine audio of this game. So let's just compare the game sound to other YouTube videos from the same car but in real life, because if we compare two YouTube videos with one another, they're both compressed, so surely they should sound similar at that point, right? So I hope it is obvious that this is not a YouTube compression issue. I will say that the car sounds like close enough. It's really just the pitch that's a little bit off. It's just cope. The YouTube compression thing, it's just pure cope. But at times Ian Bell also just wants to outright gaslight people, or maybe he's so gaslit himself when someone, like for example, mentioned that there seems to be poor AI in the game based on videos that they have seen. He basically responded with saying that he has never seen better AI anywhere else. I mean, I guess it makes sense when you don't play anything else except your own racing games, I guess. Now, Super GT already showed that the handling, especially on the hypercars, especially if you're driving on a pad, is extremely strange, and the cars are basically just kind of like sliding around the corners, like back and forth. Once again, Ian Bell just coming in and saying that this doesn't actually happen. You're hallucinating. The physics are absolutely next generation. Yeah, if that is the next generation, then I think I'm gonna just downgrade to a PlayStation 2. Thank you. And this also just extends to other parts of the team, so this isn't just like Ian Bell being the way he is. But even the official Twitter account of Project Motor Racing basically makes fun of the situation, saying that this is just modern gaming. This is just how modern gaming is. You released the game in the state that it is. This was a decision that you made. No one was asking you to release the game in this state. You could have delayed it. This is not modern gaming. This is not just a modern gaming problem. You're the problem. God damn it. So yeah, with the state of the game and also just how this criticism has been handled over the last couple of hours, this has basically led to a complete full-on meltdown. So Project Motor Racing does have an official Discord server that basically went into complete lockdown mode. So people just started to join and flood the server, and it was just like a constant back and forth between people who were shitting on the game and people who were diehard defending on the game, and it was just constant arguing over and over again. To the point where the moderators of that Discord eventually just said, you know what, we're giving up, and they just kind of like let the spam flourish and only like filtered out some of the like genuine, like actually bad messages. It got to a point where people started to post AI slop as well, just flooding the server with AI slop, like for example this image here. It's just great situation overall, Christ. However, recently it also came out that some of the mods have been threatened and harassed to various degrees, which is obviously not okay, and I think a lot of people are definitely overreacting a little bit at the end of the day. This is just a mid-tier, underbaked racing game that came out that was massively oversold. It's completely unnecessary to threaten any of the moderators who are just trying to like keep things straight on the official Discord server, and just people overreacting to this to an insane degree. So, what do we learn from this entire situation? I think what I took away from this is that the phrase built from the ground up is actually cursed, as they have used this phrase here to describe the physics engine, which was built from the ground up. So let this be a lesson to you. Do not use this phrase, ever. It curses your game. It curses your game's release. Don't ever use the phrase built from the ground up. We've seen this with Forza. We've now seen this with PNMR. Don't say it. Just don't ever say it. So yeah, this kind of encapsulates the Project Motor Racing situation. Needless to say, this is probably the biggest shitstorm I have seen this year, or in general in a very good while when it comes to racing games. And will it end here, or will we see more developments on the situation? I don't know. If there's like some major developments, I'll probably tell you about it. But for now, that is it. thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, take care, take it easy. And as always, peace. See you guys.